COGTA Minister Thembi Nkadimeng has introduced new rules to restore order in municipalities. At least that's the aim. The new regulations stipulate that councillors may not sabotage meetings and create disruptions. If they do, they could face criminal charges. Let's unpack the story further this morning. We're joined by the Chief of Operations at the Local Government Association, Lance Joel. It's great to talk to you. And I imagine electorate in part of the country, particular parts of the country, will say it's about time and long overdue.
Well, good morning, Michelle, and also good morning to the viewers. Indeed, it's an exciting development, and a development that is likely to introduce a bit more stability across our municipalities in the country. And it should not be seen as a punitive measure, but it's really a measure that would ensure that municipal councils, that are the core decision makers in municipalities, execute the responsibilities that councillors have been elected for. So it's a positive development. Yeah,
absolutely. And I imagine it's a development that is brought in, to try and deal with issues of service delivery as well, Lance, because I wonder how much time, if we could quantify how much time we waste in those council sittings just as a result of political posturing and how that might have translated into service delivery, we'd be astounded.
Yes, indeed, Michelle, the reality is that the municipal councils dictate from a policy perspective what should and should not happen in a municipality. And in many instances, decisions are to be made around service delivery in that particular municipality. So a municipal council meeting to take those decisions is a critical component in the value chain. If they do not meet, it would result in the decisions not being taken, but more importantly, services not being delivered to communities. So indeed, it will save in the long run not only the stability in municipalities, but it also saves the municipality from financial losses potentially that it could incur.
Yeah. So the regulations include, and this is not limited to these three things that I've outlined here, but it basically says unlawful conduct by councillors will be prosecuted, right? So it includes the disruptions we've been talking about, but also councillors who participate in protest action and incite communities to do so, and those who walk out of council meetings, Lance.
Yeah. Look, Michelle, the law through the Structures Act, and there is a code of conduct that regulates how councillors must conduct themselves. There is an important requirement, and that requirement is that councillors must attend meetings of council and stay in attendance in meetings of council. So the regulations are essentially just taking further that particular regulation that ensures that councillors remain in attendance and allows for council to complete the business that it has been convened for. So that's the first important part. But the second important part is that we have also seen councillors acting outside of the responsibilities that have been given, and as you have indicated, in some instances also being part of the problem. So it's also hoping to respond to that particular challenge. But I must make this point, Michelle, is that the regulations supported by the Code of Conduct itself defines a process that must be followed where there are instances of contravention of the Code of Conduct. And that process could ultimately result in the removal of a councillor by the relevant MEC in the province. So we must be alive to the fact that there are processes that have to be followed, and it's not merely just an event where a councillor is removed.
Right. Perhaps you can clarify that for us, Lance. I mean, these regulations are great on paper, but what does the follow-through look like? And when we talk broadly about disruptions in council meetings, is that too broad a term? Can you give us a sense of how this is going to be implemented and how councillors are going to be held accountable?
Yeah. No, an important question, Michelle. Firstly, every single municipal council has what we call a speaker, and the speaker essentially is the chairperson of the meetings of all councils. So the responsibility to enforce and champion the implementation of the Code of Conduct resides with the Speaker itself. So the Speaker is a very important role player in ensuring that the Code of Conduct is complied with, and where there's a contravention, the Speaker is clearly guided by the Code of Conduct on the processes that must be followed where there are instances of contravention. So firstly, a Speaker plays a very important role during the process. And once the Speaker has activated the process of investigation, as we would call it, it would then result in recommendations being made back to the Council. And once the Council has considered that, it will be referred to the MEC responsible for local government in the province. And then the MEC has the option to weigh up what has been investigated by the municipality and take a decision based on the recommendations that have been made. So it's a defined process that must be followed. So all we would have to do is to ensure that speakers play the role of enforcement of the Code of Conduct itself. Yeah.
I mean, it would be a lot easier if the speakers themselves were not politically affiliated, right? Because that's the other part of the discussion. We also don't want to stifle the kind of rigorous engagement that we do see between councillors in those important sittings, Lance.
No, an important point, and that's why you would see the regulations go further by also indicating that where a speaker, him or herself, does not play the role that is expected, that speaker, him or herself, could likewise also face the very same processes that are and could be initiated against councillors. So it's a rigorous process that looks at all of the role players, and I think it's an exciting opportunity for us to bring a bit more stability in our municipalities.
How do you reckon, Lance, councillors are receiving the news of these regulations?
Well, I mean, our own, well, firstly to indicate that as SALGA, which is the representative voice of municipalities, we have, leading up to the development of the regulations, but also when the regulations themselves were gazetted for comment, we have also interacted with councillors and make our own inputs into the regulations themselves. So from where we are sitting, there is a general welcoming of the regulations, and there's an appreciation that indeed it will assist us across the board, across all municipalities, to execute the responsibility. So there's not been any rejection from where we are sitting, and there's really an opportunity for us to welcome this exciting development.
And a good development, Lance, as well, on the road to elections, would you say?
Well, yes, we've just emerged from our own elections in November 2021, so this is really to assist ourselves. But more importantly, I think there's a link between what the regulations want to achieve, and that is the execution of the mandate of local government, and what is likely to find expression next year in the 2024 elections. So somewhat a link, but not necessarily to influence the outcome of the 2024 elections.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the test now, the litmus test now is, as we get these regulations in place, whether indeed we do see it translating. I mean, we opened this discussion about the impact on the shenanigans in council on service delivery. Now we need to see whether these regulations actually give us the boost that we're looking for.
Well, Michelle, I mean, early indications are, you will recall that these regulations were gazetted in October 2022, so almost a year ago. Mm-hmm. So we have created already within municipalities itself awareness around these regulations that are coming. So we had the benefit to already include into the rules, standing rules of councils, key elements of the regulations. So councillors themselves have already started conducting themselves in line with the regulations. Now that it's been gazetted in June, it is now formal, and therefore there's no discretion anymore. So we've had the benefit of its implementation, and we have seen positive developments already. Well, time will tell where we are going to in the next few months, which are the early days of the implementation of the actual gazette.
Yeah, absolutely. Lance Joel, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thanks very much indeed for your time. SALGA's Chief of Operations, as we take a look at these new regulations insofar as the conduct of councillors.